brief. Let me see. Yeah, I feel you can see the slides now here.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'll go for full screen. Yes.
All good, all good.
Yeah, yeah. So it's always a pleasure and honor to be there on this platform, and a very prestigious platform of Cardiovacon. And can I? Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir. Go, please.
Okay.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Right. Right. Okay. So my today's talk is on SGLT2 inhibitors, potential mechanisms of cardiovascular benefits. Let me, before I start, let me have a disclaimer that this is not a talk which has been sponsored by any SGLT2 inhibitor company. One. Second, I'm not a basic science person, neither I'm a cardiologist. And I'm basically a hardcore clinician, and will try to understand some of the very difficult kind of mechanisms which have been proposed. And whatever I have gone through is possibly, maybe sometimes you feel incomplete, but maybe we will learn together on these difficult topics which has been proposed to be spoken in front of you. So what are the key physiological effects of SGLT2 inhibitors when it comes to cardiovascular benefit? Now more pertaining to the heart failure issue here. So we know that SGLT2 inhibitors have two major components when it comes to the clinical scenario, that it causes glycosuria and it causes increase in natriuresis and increases the osmotic diuresis. Now we have to understand how does this, how does it affect the clinical part of the diabetology, and how does it impact a type 2 diabetes person? How does it help in the clinical outcomes? And we should be happy that that after so many years, maybe around 100 years of insulin discovery, we hardly had any molecule which has shown CV benefits. And CV outcome trials have really opened our eyes from SGLT2 inhibitors and GLP-1 analogs. So to cut down this story a little short, that glycosuria, when we say it reduces HbA1c, so it reduces glucose. It does reduce the glucose toxicity. I feel everyone should know that glucose itself is toxic to the beta cell. And once you reduce glucose, you end up with reducing glucose toxicity and end up with improving the health of beta cells. It does have its effect on reducing insulin resistance, improving beta cell function, and it also reduces body weight. When it comes to increased natriuresis as well as osmotic diuresis, it reduces plasma volume. Importantly here is it also reduces interstitial fluid, where it becomes little different as far as the action profile is concerned with diuretics, loop diuretics especially here. It also reduces blood pressure, and it also helps in maintaining blood pressure, reducing blood pressure, and giving all renal benefits as well as cardiac benefit by reducing glomerular hyperfiltration. And through these two basic mechanisms of its glycemic effects of SGLT2 inhibitors, and on my right is the extra glycemic effects or pleiotropic effects of SGLT2 inhibitors. And it ends up with giving you metabolic, cardiovascular, renal. And I just heard a wonderful talk on NAFLD. Even on NAFLD, you have now data from practically all SGLT2 inhibitors coming up gradually. So SGLT2 inhibitors have three main proposed mechanisms which can actually give a benefit of BP reduction and improving the cardiac function. And one is reduced preload and afterload. So by reducing plasma volume, by reducing vascular resistance at the periphery, they will improve the preload and afterload. They improve the myocardial energetics by reducing the reliance on fatty acids, because when you don't have enough glucose, enough insulin, and in diabetics, you don't have enough insulin. So the glucose metabolism or glucose oxidation gets affected. And that's why you need a fuel from some other sources. So fatty acid is one fuel, but now here they use ketone bodies. Up till now, we have been taught that ketones are bad, but for heart here, it improves the health of myocardium, and ketone bodies seem to be Good. It also reduces cardiac NHE. There is sodium hydrogen exchanger 1. There are various NHEs across in cardiac for cardiac NH1, which actually is one of the responsible mechanism for cardiomyopathy or deterioration of the cardiomyocyte function. They are being inhibited through a wonderful proposed mechanism that also we'll try to understand. And also the cardiac remodeling, that by decreasing inflammation, decreasing fibrosis, and maybe decreasing cardiac wall stress. Now you have data from empagliflozin arm that it has a cardiac remodeling. So in total, with these three basic mechanisms, it causes reduction in the blood pressure, it improves cardiac contractility, it reduces LV mass and improves the diastolic function, which ultimately gets reflected in whatever CV outcome trial benefiters looking for or seeing for from across all the SGLT2 inhibitors, especially for heart failure. I'm not too much interested discussing here about the mortality, cardiac related mortality or fatality. I'm more interested here. The topic given to me is on LV function. So it protects against myocardial injury and heart failure. And that is why in CV outcome trial, you find out that there is decreased morbidity, mortality, and hospitalization for heart failure. So let us see how does it reduces the preload and the afterload. So preload reduction is basically through natriuresis and osmotic diuresis, which reduces the preload, that is LV filling, and results into a LV reduction in the LV wall stress. This is particularly important in patients with those who have diastolic dysfunction, and we know that almost 50% of your people with type 2 diabetes have some amount of diastolic dysfunction. Up till now in our clinical practice, when cardiologists used to give us a report of echo mentioning about LVEF around 55% and diastolic dysfunction, we usually used to ignore diastolic dysfunction because we never thought of it that diastolic dysfunction can be of so clinical important. And that is why now after these trials, we have started realizing that even diastolic dysfunction is important. So 50% of the people with type 2 diabetes have LV diastolic dysfunction, and that gets improved once you reduce the preload. Now, what about the afterload? Now, SGLT2 inhibitors have been shown to have its action on the stiffness of the arterial wall. So it reduces the arterial wall stiffness, and that is why once you reduce the stiffness, naturally it reduces blood pressure, and which contributes to the reduction in the afterload. So these are two basic mechanisms. How do you reduce preload and afterload when you use SGLT2 inhibitors? Next comes is the diuresis or diuresis, the SGLT2 inhibitors versus loop diuretics, and this is an argument which has started earlier when the data of CV outcome trial has come. And before this data has come, people used to argue and why this benefit of CV outcome is not seen in people who are being put on loop diuretics since many years for all these heart failure issues. So now the data has come that we know that when it is congestive heart failure, they have interstitial edema. And now this interstitial edema, apart from fluid overload, has interstitial edema. This interstitial edema is being reduced by both by loop diuretics as well as by SGLT2 inhibitors. But importantly, when it comes to SGLT2 inhibitors, the intravascular volume reduction is lesser versus the interstitial volume reduction. When you talk about loop diuretics, you have intravascular as well as interstitial volume reduction, and that is why that is how SGLT2 inhibitors seems to have better clinical profile when it's being used versus loop diuretics, and it does not increase the risk of dehydration and other electrolyte imbalances. And this is data from dapagliflozin versus a diuretic, and if you can see, there is increase in the sodium excretion in 24 hours. If you can see the peak in first 2 to 3 hours with the diuretic versus there's not much of the peak here, and there's stable reduction, stable excretion of sodium when you use dapagliflozin, which again reduces the risk of hyponatremia. Blood volume does not get affected as bad. It is very stable, and interstitial volume reduction is shown very classical versus when you use diuretic, you have a reduction in the blood volume also, which can also cause postural hypotension, especially when you use it in elderly population. And that is why SGLT2 inhibitors seem to have its diuretic effect, which is very positive to the outcome. Now, the next part, apart from the first, we have seen the preload and afterload reduction. Let us see how it improves the myocardial energetics and myocardial health. And this is if you just see these two diagrams, this is a diabetic heart, and this is a diabetic heart treated with SGLT2 inhibitors. To meet the high metabolic demand of, now we know that our heart is contracting continuously 24/7. And to meet this demand of contractibility, your heart needs energy. And this heart deploys the metabolic flexibility to catabolize an array of various substrates. It might use the glucose, it might use fatty acid, and also ketones oxidation. In type 2 diabetes and or heart failure, the metabolic flexibility decreases, and an over-reliance on the fatty acid oxidation actually reduces the cardiac efficiency. And if you see the cardiac efficiency, it is, if you see the fuel utilization in patients who have diabetic heart, they use here fatty acid here. But when you use SGLT2, the fatty acid oxidation is reduced and the ketone oxidation is improved. And this is what classically you see the improvement in the cardiac function. The SGLT2 inhibitors increases the production of ketone bodies. So here you have ketone bodies which are good for your heart, which are higher energetic and oxygen efficient fuel than the fatty acid. SGLT2 inhibitors may also reduce the risk of heart failure by enhancing cardiac efficiency and contractile functions through increased metabolism of ketone bodies. And this has been shown in the preclinical models and other data available to us from various publications. So this is how it actually improves the cardiac function and the metabolism of the cardiac muscle or myocardium. I feel it also, we know that NH1 is responsible for the accumulation of this calcium in the myocardium or the cardiomyocytes, and it causes the stiffness of the myocardium, which has been proposed as one of the mechanisms for development of cardiomyopathy and the LV dysfunction. And this has been if SGLT2 actually inhibitors, they inhibit this NH1, reduces the calcium here. And when you have intracellular calcium going up, your mitochondrial calcium goes up, and it affects the health of the myocardium, of the mitochondrium. And this once you reduce the interstitial or once you reduce the myocardial or the cardiac muscle calcium level, the calcium at the mitochondrial level improves, and it improves the health of the health of the mitochondria in the cardiac muscle. So in this way, you end up with reducing the stiffness of the risk of increasing stiffness in the myocardium and cardiomyocytes in patients who are put on SGLT2 inhibitors by inhibiting NHE1. Now, dapagliflozin has shown a significant decrease in the tissue sodium content. This is another thing. I feel sodium content in skin is highest in your tissue, and if you reduce sodium content, it might also give an additional advantage in reduction of blood pressure and in patient with diabetes. Through, of course, natriuresis. SGLT2 inhibitors may attenuate the development of cardiac hypertrophy, fibrosis, and remodeling. Now, how does it affect the remodeling? It reduces inflammation and fibrosis, and it reduces the cardiac wall stress. How it does it? Cardiac fibrosis is an important contributor to the development of heart failure by impeding ventricular compliances. Advanced glycated end products that play a role in diabetes also lead to cardiomyocyte stiffness and myocardial collagen deposition. Collagen deposition by cardiac fibroblast in concert with the neurohormonal activation actually ultimately causes elevated wall stress, chamber dilatation, contractile dysfunction, and heart failure. SGLT2 inhibitors have been shown in the rodent model, animal model, and also in ex vivo human studies to exhibit anti-fibrotic effect by inhibiting the fibroblast activation and collagen synthesis. So once you inhibit the fibroblast activation, you reduce fibrosis, as well as you also end up with reducing collagen synthesis, which actually helps to improve the health of the cardiac muscle, which is being called as cardiac remodeling. So this is again a same mechanism that you have a remodeling of the heart by using SGLT2 inhibitors. The left ventricular hypertrophy is being reduced. There is there is in diabetic heart, you have increased inflammation. You have the extracellular matrix remodeling again being done. And after using SGLT2 inhibitors, the heart function and the contractibility is improved. The next part of the benefit is by reduction of the blood pressure. I feel we have seen this, that SGLT2 inhibitors does have its impact on more on interstitial volume reduction versus intravascular volume reduction. A decrease in the blood pressure by SGLT2 inhibitors, in part due to volume changes associated with unique natriuretic and osmotic diuretic effect, are thought to be fundamental contributor to the cardioprotective effect. The resultant contraction in volume observed with SGLT2 treatment hemodynamically unload the left ventricle and decreases the myocardial oxygen demand, ventricular wall tension, and filling pressures. The osmotic diuretic effect associated with SGLT2 inhibitors differ from that is observed in conventional diuretics, as the SGLT2 inhibitor may predominantly reduces interstitial volume and minimal changes in the intravascular volume. The preferential reduction in the interstitial volume, fluid observed with SGLT2 inhibitors may limit the reflexive sympathetic overactivity, which is associated with traditional diuretics. Now, it also, SGLT2 inhibitors have, this was I feel dapagliflozin data, that it also lowers the ambulatory blood pressure over 24 hours when it was compared with placebo, as well as the data comparing it with the hydrochlorothiazide. So nighttime blood pressure also found to be better. It also improves the cardiac contractibility by reducing LV mass and improving diastolic function. I feel we have data coming from empagliflozin recently that it improves the, it reduces the LV mass. So the diabetic heart has ventricular hypertrophy, collagen deposition, and cardiomyocyte stiffness. The diabetic heart treated with actually SGLT2 inhibitors may improve the LV mass is reduced, reduction in the fibrosis, reduced cardiomyocyte stiffness. The early clinical evidences suggest that short-term treatment with SGLT2 inhibitors in patients with type 2 diabetes and established CV disease was associated with significant reduction in LV mass index, and this is data coming from empagliflozin, and improved diastolic function. Recent data has also confirmed that SGLT2 inhibitors can promote reverse cardiac remodeling, that is reduction in the LV mass in patients with type 2 diabetes and stable CAD with normal ejection fraction. So even if you have stable CAD and normal ejection fraction, it might give a benefit to the heart muscle. The mechanism through which the LV regression is occurring is yet to be eluded. Additional evidence from animal model has also shown that it improves the diastolic function, and partly maybe because of the reduction in the myofilament stiffness through their action profile. This is the EMPA heart now primary outcome has also shown there is reduction in the LV mass index as well as the papillary mass index to the surface versus surface area, and that's what statistically found to be significant. EMPA heart has again shown the analysis for LV mass index and have shown to be good, whether it is the LV mass index, papillary mass index versus surface area seem to be better. Empagliflozin's use demonstrated significant reduction in electrolyte-free water clearance. This is RESET CHF study, 23 patients, small number, receiving loop diuretics, RCTs, the EMPA 10 milligram versus the placebo, and the 24 hours volume, urinary volume, 24 urinary sodium, and electrolyte-free water clearance was found to be beneficial and seemed to be in favor of the SGLT2 inhibitor here. Influence, now it is EMPEROR reduced in patient with reduced ejection fraction. There is concomitant diuretic therapy if given. The empagliflozin have shown to have patient requiring diuretics dose modification, dose reduction in EMPA when it is being given with empagliflozin. And these are all benefits, practically no fear of hypokalemia, hyponatremia, hypocalcemia, or other electrolyte imbalances when you use SGLT2 inhibitors versus loop diuretics. And there's also data from other drugs which are being used. This is a recent abstract, which was 2019 in Circulation, the randomized controlled trial of DAPA on LVH in DAPA LVH trial. And I'll not go into detail of it, but the result says that dapagliflozin significantly reduced LV mass compared to placebo group. And DAPA has also induced LV mass regression, was greatest in those who had MI as a baseline. And this abstract has concluded that DAPA treatment significantly reduced LV mass, 24 hours ambulatory and nocturnal systolic blood pressure, body weight, visceral adiposity, which I have not covered here, subcutaneous adipose tissue, insulin resistance, and high sensitivity CRP. The regression of LV mass suggests dapagliflozin can initiate reverse remodeling, as we have seen in EMPA, and change in the LV structure, which may be an important mechanism for cardioprotection of SGLT2 inhibitors. DAPA actually has improved the endothelial function also. Again, I'm not going into detail of all these studies, but these are some messages to us as a clinician that how best we can utilize SGLT2 inhibitors with more aggression in a given case. This also improves diastolic function in patients who have associated heart failure. And this is also, there's also a reduction in the NT-proBNP when you use canagliflozin in patient with associated cardiac failure. So there's significant reduction, and also HS tropi has found to be reduced. So there is some definite reduction in the inflammation and heart failure. The biomarker is reduced. SGLT2 inhibitors, biomarkers, and inflammatory markers. So Cana has been associated with lower level of cardiac failure biomarker. This I have already shown you. And SGLT2 inhibitors may protect the kidney by elevating even erythropoietin levels. So now there's a recent data where you have seen that erythropoietin level improves in patient with renal impairment, and that also corrects anemia, which will have in turn benefit on cardiac outcomes. Empagliflozin improves the hematocrit in patient with CAD with type 2 diabetes, and increase in the erythropoietin accompanied by the increase in the hematocrit. And this has been observed here in this pie diagram, as well as the graph here on my left side. There is effect on anemia in patient with heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, and increase in the hemoglobin level at 52 weeks in patient with CKD by around 0.7 gram, in patient without CKD almost 0.75 gram. And though it was not statistically significant, but there is 2.5 fold increase in the reduction of anemia with empagliflozin, which possibly will help into this better CV outcome. And this is I feel the clinical part of it, that empagliflozin has shown to have a better heart failure related outcome in patients who have reduced ejection fraction. And this is a recent data of tropism. There's a double-blind placebo-controlled trial on patient who has heart failure with reduced ejection fraction without type 2 diabetes, and this are non-diabetic patients, and around 84 patients and have ischemic heart failure. And they have used already RAS inhibitors, ARNI, beta blockers, and EMPA use has demonstrated significant improvement in the cardiac structure and function in patient with heart failure with reduced ejection fraction without even type 2 diabetes. And I feel this is what has been now dapagliflozin has, I feel, approved in US FDA by US FDA for its use up to in heart failure. And other SGLT2 inhibitors have also been have advocated by most of the guidelines to be used in patient with heart failure. I feel there are some couple of slides. SGLT2 inhibitors and sympathetic nervous system. DAPA has actually reduced the sympathetic nervous system activity. The exact mechanism is not understood. SGLT2 inhibitors modulate the sympathetic nervous system through cardiorenal signaling, and this was been hypothesized. You have renal stress, hypoxia, you have afferent renal sympathetic overdrive, central nervous system activation, and responsible for heart failure. And SGLT2 inhibitors reduces the intraglomerular pressure and possibly hypoxia, which ultimately end up with reduction in the heart failure through sympathetic reduction in the sympathetic overactivity. SGLT2 inhibitors and cardiorespiratory fitness, and this is empagliflozin data, which has shown the reduced LV mass index in patient, which I already covered in some other slides. And EMPA has also shown to reduce LV extracellular matrix expansion and interstitial edema we discussed. Use demonstrated significant improvement in the pulmonary artery diastolic pressure in patient with heart failure, which is EMBRAS HF. So now you have multiple mechanisms of giving benefit to the cardiac and cardiac. I'm not covering of the renal health, but the cardiac health in toto. So risk of pulmonary hypertension is reduced. Empagliflozin improves the cardiorespiratory fitness in patient with type 2 diabetes. This is the patient with usual failure versus empagliflozin, and from the baseline to the follow-up cases, which was statistically significant. So the key message is from SGLT2 inhibitors cohort is there's SGLT2 inhibitors, they profoundly prevent the heart failure and also prevent and treat the renal disease in type 2 diabetes. We have not covered renal cohort here. There are several mechanisms, several proposed mechanisms. Some of them are proved in the animal models. Some of them are proved in even the human models. Some have shown as a clinical outcome in CV outcome trials, and there are dynamic changes every day, every week. You're getting some or other newer hypothesis in favor of SGLT2 inhibitors and their mechanisms. And this is a field which is, I feel still we are learning. Metabolic alterations may underlie these outcomes. Benefits are independent of the HbA1c lowering, because now it is being shown even in patients with type 2 non-diabetics, and are observed across a broad spectrum of EGFR of more than 30. So anyone who has EGFR of more than 30 with associated cardiovascular disease or heart failure, I feel they are the candidate for such molecule of SGLT2 inhibitors. I feel these are last one or two slides. There's bidirectional pathophysiological interactions between the kidney and heart in type 2 diabetes. In circulation, you have increased volume expansion, increased vasoconstriction, increased systolic blood pressure. In heart, you have increased preload, afterload, increased cardiac wall stress, cardiac efficiency output is reduced. And and that's why you'll end up with diabetic cardiomyopathy, increased risk of heart failure, increased risk of diabetic kidney disease. And in kidney, you have increased glucose sodium reabsorption, intraglomerular pressure, increased RAS activity. This is the basic profile of any type 2 diabetes coming to you for your treatment. And how does the SGLT2 inhibitors improve that? SGLT2 inhibitors reduces plasma volume, reduces arterial stiffness, reduces systolic blood pressure, improves the hematocrit. It reduces cardiac preload and afterload, reduces cardiac wall stress, improves cardiac efficiency and its output. It improves cardiac function and renal function through cardiorenal protection. It reduces glucose sodium reabsorption, reduces intraglomerular pressure, reduces RAS activity, reduces hyperfiltration, reduces inflammation and hypoxia. It causes glucosuria, diuresis, natriuresis, and end up with improved clinical outcome of CV outcome, reduced hospitalization for heart failure, stabilization of EGFR, and reduction in albuminuria when it comes to renal benefit. With this, I stop here. Thank you. Thank you.